Welcome to Serious Talk, the Military Minute. I'm your host, Greg Banks. We're all about helping veterans, active service members, and military spouses find their place in the Salesforce ecosystem through real success stories and practical resources. Grab your coffee and let's talk about how your military experience can be your secret weapon in the tech world. Nick Stump, welcome to Serious Talk, the Military Minute. It's great to have you on the show today. Little background on Nick. He's been in the Salesforce ecosystem since May of 2023. Simple math, a little over a couple of years. 5-time Salesforce certified, consultant on Team Echo. I did poll your peers for a little bit of feedback on you. We'll get into some of this later, but you are an Air Force drill instructor. Not something I would have guessed. I'm sure there's a whole other parallel personality we can tap into if we need to. And it was just said you were in the military a long time. And we'll dig into some of that. Couple of quotes that I wanted to throw at you. One of the things that I think makes Nick so effective is his ability to be the calm in the storm. When the inevitable issues pop up and the stress level starts rising, he can be counted on to keep a cool, confident demeanor and help others focus their energy in a productive direction. To me, that seems like a skill he developed in the military, but regardless, it's for sure one of his superpowers. The other one was he's steady and reliable no matter what happens. He's also very good at customer interactions like demos, discovery, and training. You're well admired by your peer group, man. I regret that I haven't had a chance to work with you directly until now, but look forward to learning more about you today. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And that's awesome to hear, from my peers and everything like that. So excited to get going into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's serious. We do a lot of kind of shout outs in Slack and whatnot around here, but as we've gotten bigger and gotten busier, some of those things fall to the wayside a little bit. So I always like to bring that back for the interview. But great. On this show, like one of the things we're really trying to do is just tell positive, successful stories about people navigating from the military back to civilian life. That journey doesn't look the same for any two people that I've come across. But before we talk about you getting out, let's talk about you getting in. Tell me a little bit about Nick, pre-drill instructor. Why did you go in? Why did you choose the branch? Just give us a little background.
Yeah. So originally for me, so just to kind of put it into context, I did join the military when I was 17. So my mom had to sign the permission slip, do all that cool stuff to send me off to basic. But leading up to that, a lot of why I came into the service was originally I was thinking that, hey, I'll do college and I'll also do the reserves as well. So I'll do like the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year idea. I went to a recruiter's office. And I guess just my 17-year-old self was very impressionable in that sense, where they were like, hey, would you like to just go active duty? They asked me about my college plans and really my high school career. I had acceptable grades, good grades, but I played sports. So that was where I was at. So I wasn't really thinking about, hey, what am I going to do once this ends? There's definitely a level of, are you able to play in college? Are you not? Once I made that decision, hey, I'm not going to be able to play, for anything too big in terms of sports, I started thinking about my plans, which was very lucky that I was to talk to the recruiter. But essentially, it was very easy conversation. They told me about the service, talked about the Air Force, everything like that, and I decided to join. I come from a family of Marines, so they're very prideful from where they come from, but they steered me into the Air Force a little bit. So they were like, hey, I'm once a Marine, always a Marine, but I'd like the opportunity for you to go to the Air Force if you're going to do the service. So that's basically how it happened. It was very quick. I would say the process was about 3 months once I made the decision that I'm like going to talk to the recruiter and then actually ship off for basic training.
And what year was when did you go in?
2009.
Okay. I'm just thinking timeline wise. I was in college when the first Gulf War broke out. So
yes.
Always kind of context to what I was doing at that time and what was going on in the world at that time. But if I remember right, some of the killed in action numbers were creeping up pretty good around that time, if I remember. So again, just always try to, I know people don't go into this half cocked. You're aware of what's going on. 8 at 17. Like I'm sure the conversation's been had, but if there's military roots in your family, it's like, you're going to do it freaking right. But
exactly.
I've never heard of a Marine recommending somebody go in the Air Force. So that's an interesting story.
It hurts them, I'm sure. I know it hurts a little bit, from where their pride's at, but they would always talk about, all the stuff that they would have to do, waking up early, doing their PT at 4 a.m. and they'd see the Air Force guys at the golf course and stuff, which is an over exaggeration for sure. But as a 17-year-old, it was a very big selling point for me.
Yeah, I had toyed with the idea of going into OCS. I was a couple of years into college when I was thinking about it. And my grandfather and dad were both in the Army. And but I was leaning towards the Air Force. The original Top Gun came out in my high school years. So who didn't want the aviators and all that went with that. But the idea of a pilot and all that kind of stuff just intrigued
But
me.
yeah,
My dad worked at the airline, so military or not, the concept of pilots, things like that sounded good. And for no particular reason other than that, I was leaning towards the Air Force. I had no emotional ties to a branch. But
right.
so somebody said a long time. Why don't you quantify what a long time was and talk a little bit about, if you could sum up your time in the Air Force in, 20 sentences, something like that. What does that look like to you? How do you sum up a long career?
Yeah, I mean, I think basically when I transitioned to Sirius, I was around 14 years in the military, 13 years in the military at that point. So basically from 2009 up until 2023, that was my time frame. So coming into the Air Force, I was an emergency or electrical power production technician, which is two things. On one side of it is I worked on generators for emergency backup systems, and then on the other side of it is there would be a cable for planes that would have emergencies. So if they needed to attach via the tail hook, they're not able to stop or safely do so, we would work on that. It's the land version of what you hear about on like Navy carriers. Navy carriers, that's like a normal way they stop the plane is by running into a cable. We have the land version of that in the Air Force, and I worked on that was 10 years of my career. Numerous different positions, went overseas quite a bit, deployed, got to experience a lot of different places in the world. And then the last 3 years and some change, I got selected to be a military training instructor while I was in Afghanistan. I got the notification and did that for about 3 years. And that kind of led me that was the last stop that I had while I was in the military.
So you said something intriguing there. You said you were a drill instructor, but you did it in Afghanistan. So were these new recruits that you were training, or were these
No,
new
no,
to
no. So
Afghanistan?
So no, what happened is that I was in Afghanistan and they have this program where you basically get vetted, you get selected. Typically they let you know ahead of time. Because I was already overseas, I think the leaders in my organization put my name in. And when you're gone, sometimes it can be a little bit of out of sight, out of mind. They submitted my name for 3 different programs without my knowledge, which is cool. And I got selected for the military training
Okay.
instructor program. And then once I came back from Afghanistan, I had to process out, do some training, do a little bit of evaluations and stuff like that. And then I went to Lackland to go to school. So, yep.
Okay. Cool. And I'm trying to think here. I've interviewed a couple from the Air Force, Jenny and Justin.
Hmm.
And one question I always like asking, "What's your MOS?" And Jenny quickly corrected me and is like, "That's not what we call it in the Air Force. Is it AFCS? Did I say that right?"
AFSC, yeah, Air Force
AFSC. I got the
Specialty.
right
Yep.
letters. All right. So what was yours?
Mine was 3OX2. And then it was, 8 Mike as well. So as an instructor, so they're the two,
Okay.
one of them's a special duty and one of them is your regular job, as you were. So for 10-ish years, I was a
Okay.
3OX2.
Cool. And what was the beginning of the end? What made you decide to get out?
Yeah, so I love being overseas. I love deploying. The selfish part of myself was very much into that. I loved it. It seemed to be very simple. I worked out, I did my job, and you got to see the effects of your work a lot closer when you were overseas, even in some not great environments. But I also had a family, I have children and stuff like that, and I wanted to see them more often. And ultimately, you mature a little bit as a person too, and you realize like, hey, I've been gone a lot, like consecutive years, three out of 5 years being gone is a long time when you're planning on starting a family and stuff like that. And I saw an advertisement once I came back. It was in the middle of while I was a drill instructor, and I love doing that. But I saw an advertisement for Salesforce for an internship program, and that again, I'm very easily swayed. Obviously, I apply logic, but it was one of those. It got me in the door very easily. I was like, hey, let me
Yeah.
hear what they have to say about that, and then I had to talk about it and made the decision very quickly.
Cool. Yeah, I would never equate business travel to serving in the military, but being gone is one thing, being gone with family is a completely different animal. And I
Right.
remember my oldest son, he's 2 or 3, he's chatty, he's having his own feelings, if you would. He's like, "Daddy, when you coming home?" And
Yeah.
it wasn't long after that, I went in and said, "Hey, I got to change positions. I can't do this anymore." I traveled for almost 20 years in business.
Yep.
It was fun for a while, but it got old pretty quick. So cool. All right. So we know why you got out. You learned about, you didn't really go out seeking Salesforce per se, but that came onto your radar. One of the things I always like to speak to is, I mean, you saw an ad, but talk about any other resources, whether they're the ones that led you to Salesforce or not, if there was Hiring Our Heroes or any kind of official programs or the things on the base or wherever. What resources did you come across, and any you can speak to that you have personal involvement with that you could really recommend?
Yeah, so I think at most services, because I've been on a joint base before, so I have experience seeing Army, I seen Navy and Air Force, and every base that I've been to or location I've been to has a education center, and that's where I saw that. So I attended an education brief because I was debating on getting out of the service in general. And while I was debating that, I attended something called TAPS, which is the Transitional Assistance Program. It's kind of congressionally mandated. You have to do it, generally speaking, to leave the service. PowerPoints that we saw was related to Salesforce. For anybody that's interested in doing it, whether that's, hey, I'm on the fence on getting out or I am getting out, I would definitely start with your education center. But there also is there's transition offices as well throughout all the branches. I mean, my experience is, based on the Air Force, but in general, every base is going to have this set up because there's been a lot of, push to have these transition programs in place.
Yeah. I mean, there's no easy way to say it, but I would say the American military, if there's any one thing we're good at, is taking your average person and making them anything but average to make run of the mill folks come in and they're elite. There's no question about it in any branch. Where I think we have remarkably failed as a nation is whatever the inverse of that is on the backside of taking somebody that you've trained not to think, but do, not to hesitate, but act. That's not always practical in civilian life. So,
Right.
How is it you go about undoing those things you programmed into somebody? And I'm very excited, very grateful. This podcast is one of 10,000 examples of people and programs and companies that are putting money where the mouth is and trying to do something to help people. And I don't think that's a government program. I think the government owns a good part of that. But I think there's a tremendous rise in companies that realizing this is not just a patriotic thing that we should do as grateful Americans, but there's an advantage for the company to get veterans to come in and work.
Absolutely.
Here. So, and military spouses too. Like man, we can have a month of episodes just about what they get drugged through as a part of the service member being shot around the world and whatnot. So you mentioned on the way out, you found Salesforce. How did you find Cirrius?
Yeah, so I went through the hiring our heroes program. I was going through all the resume release, interview process, and that's essentially how it happened. Like a number of companies reached out. Cirrius was like, "Hey, we'd like to do an interview." I did an interview with 2 individuals, and then a couple weeks later, I was on the golf course and got an email, to check to see if I was matched with a company. And while I was golfing, I noticed that Cirrius had applied an offer to do it, and it was the first one. It was the one I wanted anyway, and I accepted it from there. So it was pretty awesome.
So if it was in 2023, so which cohort were you in? Do you remember the number?
23-2, I think was what it was. Yeah, okay. I think that's right.
All right. And I've talked to so many people at Hiring Our Heroes and about them. Is there such thing as being in Hiring Our Heroes and applying and not necessarily being 100% settled on Salesforce, or you pretty much have to choose, like, this is what I want. I want to be on the Salesforce path, and therefore you're looking at companies that offer fellowships in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, now the program could have changed, obviously, and I know it has, especially in recent years. But in general, to get as far as you do, as you would to get, an internship opportunity, you have to be pretty decided on, hey, I want to do Salesforce. Obviously, that doesn't mean like, at the end of your internship, you can't be like, hey, there's a 2-sided fit. Is the company a fit? Are you a fit for the company? But yeah, that's generally speaking, you're locked into what path you're trying to go through with that program.
It's a key that gets you into a fellowship. What happens from there
right.
is God's good humor, right?
Right.
I know you got to get an admin cert before you even qualify. So, okay, cool.
Right. Yeah.
Good deal. So you're on Team Echo. We talked about that. Let's talk a little bit about the job itself. You mentioned you have a family. We're a Salesforce implementation partner, so we're a company who's busy, to say the least, a good bit. This is to me, this is not a time clock job where you come in and punch the clock and do your 40 and punch out. Like, there's a lot that goes into this job. No doubt, at your time in the military, you learned how to multitask. You learned how to deal with stress management. You were called out by your peers as somebody who's really, really good at that. But as you think about doing this job day in and day out and managing a family and all that goes with that, how do you balance that? What in your life helps keep you really focused and effective on all fronts?
I think for myself, and this applies to just in general in life. I mean, I haven't changed my mentality, whether it was in the military. Granted, I can't say that I have any experience prior to the military. That is it. So it's like I went military straight into Cirrius. But for me, my experience in terms of being able to separate the two and have that work-life balance is I give all the effort that I can throughout the day, right? So I'm putting whatever I can, the maximum effort into that day. And then once it's time, like, hey, I get to a point where my day is done, I disconnect and I put all my effort into that other side of that hat, so every day is going to look different in terms of what that level of effort is, but it's still 100% of whatever percent that effort is. Being in the military, it's much harder to disconnect, especially when I was an instructor. It would be hard to deal with, trainees making mistakes as they should, or the questions they would ask you are completely off the wall, just crazy things that you would deal with on a regular basis. You'd go home and think about it because it's kind of your product. Those individuals that go through 8 weeks of training are what you have. It's your product at the end of those 8 weeks. Obviously, they're the ones doing the work under your vision. When you do this, obviously you have tasks, you have things you need to do, but there is an ability for you to separate and say, hey, all right, I'm done. Now I'm going to be home and I'm going to be present at this time. It's a little bit easier to separate for sure.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were talking about that, about being 100% focused. I came into the ecosystem in 2011. A study came out about that time that only like 4% of the people in the world can really multitask. Multitasking was a thing that was just being touted. This is long before Google Ads, but nonetheless, it was just, you should be effective at doing this. And the study came out and said, you're not really multitasking. Like you're doing 4 things poorly, not any one thing well. And I've learned with age that's more true than ever.
Absolutely.
So, probably in your best interest at your age to figure that out and not strain your brain in that kind of way.
Exactly.
Cool. So what are some things outside of work that you're passionate about? Are there things that you do as a family, camping, hiking, things you grew up doing that now that you're a dad, you're kind of passing that on to the next generation? What gets you going outside of work?
Yeah. I mean, when I get outside of work, I mean, just like, again, by myself, golfing, watching sports. I'm a big Ohio State fan. So anything college football, college basketball a little bit, but anything like that, I do that. Same thing for my son. My son's 5 now. So I'm kind of dragging him into that. And I'm a Reds fan as well. And they've been disappointing me since I've been alive, essentially. So I'm introducing my son to that so he can feel a little bit in terms of a little bit of adversity, right? So Ohio State football has been very successful. He has this impression that like we're just always good, which is fair, but it also, I think sports is a great thing about adversity too. So I brought him in to be a Reds fan, so he knows what disappointment's like. But as a family, yeah, as a family, like I like to take them to like Disney. They love it. I think my son's been there about 4 times in 5 years, so he's living a good life in terms of being able to see it and travel. That's a lot of it. I value a lot, especially family time experiences versus over tangible things as much as possible. And trying to teach that to my kids is something that I value a lot.
And Cincinnati home, is that where you grew up? And so your extended family's around there or no?
No, I'm from Columbus, so you kind of you pick between Cleveland or Cincinnati. My dad was a Reds fan. He grew up during like I guess he was a little kid during like the Big Red Machine era, so when they were really, really good. So he got to be a fan during the good times. I was born into it, and they have not been great since. So, yep, I just kind of followed his lead, and I think my son's going to do the same thing. I'm lucky for him.
But they're in Ohio. They're close enough by.
But yeah, everyone's in Ohio. Yep, everyone's primarily very close to where I'm at. When I left the service, I moved back to Central Ohio, and that's where most of my family's at. I do have my mom. My mom is in Florida, but outside of that, all of my family's in Columbus.
Good to hear about your family being around and whatnot. I know with your time in the service, being away from your family is the hardest thing. So coming home, I hear so many people who wind up, wherever home winds up being for them is not necessarily near the family. So really great to hear you land within driving distance of them.
Oh yeah.
It's been an interesting year on all fronts, right? Whether it's politics or economy or whatever you want to call it. But I hear it serious. I mean, it's been a fun year. We've had some really cool projects come along, some great clients. We're always learning things on the Salesforce front. It's a moving target that's always changing. So there's a lot to keep up with. But what's some lessons you learned this year that have just a really cool thing to put in your toolbox?
Yeah, I think for me, and this is something that I struggle with as a person in general, is the unknown, right? So like a lot of times, especially when I was teaching, I would be bridging the known to the unknown, right? So trying to connect those 2 dots. In this world, Salesforce itself is changing all the time. And for me, I like knowing things. And when I come across things that I don't know, sometimes that can be a little paralyzing, right? Like you're trying to figure something out and you get stuck and you realize like, I don't have that skill set or I don't have that knowledge. So one of the things that I've learned this year is to rely on other individuals, but also to tell myself that like everyone else is learning these things for the first time too. Individuals have been doing it for 20 years and all of these releases put something new out that maybe they don't announce, with bold letters, or it's kind of slipped into a release. And, you find yourself coming across it and realize everyone else is too.
Yeah. Well, and things that you knew last quarter are not there anymore. So even what's known is moving.
Right. Yeah. It's constantly.
Yeah. So one of the things I've talked to a lot of service members about, and probably mill spouses as well, is imposter syndrome. Like it is strange. I tripped and fell in this ecosystem. I was not looking for it at all. I was minding my own business and got ran over by the train. And it's what I hear about a lot of people. Like they didn't really just go. I didn't go to school to choose this, obviously. And I don't know why it's unique to this ecosystem, but as I talked to like Danielle and Hannah in particular, the first couple of episodes, and they were talking about how insufficient they felt. Do you remember feeling that? I know during the fellowship, like you're going to consultants. This is not like any run of the mill job. Like you're going to meet with technical people who do nothing but this, right? This is like having a lawyer on a retainer and going go work there. Like these are experts. Do you remember feeling that? And if so, like
Oh,
when did that
absolutely.
fade?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you got to think like I had about 14 years of experience in a similar world, right? And for 3 years as a drill instructor, by the end of that, it's kind of like clockwork. You kind of know what you're doing every day. You know the process. It's kind of like restarting, right? So like and it's hard for me to remember what it was like when I was 18 years old to be the new person without the skills and the knowledge. And it's a little bit humbling, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's like I still have consistently I come across individuals because we work with a lot of talented individuals and the things that they'll say or the things that they'll demonstrate will be eye opening and honestly mind blowing at times with some of the technical feats that we can accomplish. So, uh, imposter syndrome has mostly went away through experience, right? So you get through a couple implementations, you get positive feedback from a number of clients, but the idea that like you're content with your knowledge, I don't think goes away. I think you're continually in a mindset that you're ready to learn the next thing.
Yeah, and I can't remember who I said this to, but I don't know why we call it imposter syndrome. Like, when did anybody anywhere get a job in a new field and walk in and not feel insufficient, right? I mean, that's just
I
new
agree.
job jitters. But for whatever reason, in this space, they stuck a label on it, and here we go. But yeah, I have mentored several fellows that have come in here, and it's one of the things that I always tell them. There are three words that just scare the absolute mess out of people, and I think in tech space, particularly consulting, it's probably more real here, and that's I don't know. Like if a client asks us something,
Right.
they've paid us to be the expert. You don't necessarily want to say I don't know, but I've told our fellows, particularly like this is one time you have a lot of grace. Like nobody's
Right.
expecting anything, so
I
just don't
agree.
disappoint them, right? But to say I don't know is one thing, but to say but I'll find out and
Right.
go do that and come back, man. What people want, and I don't think that's unique to what we do, but what people want is somebody that they can trust. I feel like in this world anymore, people, not just companies, like we've all become siloed in some kind of way. But used to you go, well, that's John's job. So I'll do my part and I'll hand it off to John. And I'm
Right.
going to assume John's going to do his job. But John left. He went on vacation and didn't bother handing it off to anybody. And now I look like a
Right.
fool because that was just one link of the marathon or relay race that we were on together. But yeah, I think it's a real thing here, but it's not unique to what we do. But I'm always interested to hear. There was in 2022, 2023, like a significant percentage of the people we had here were, less than 2 years in the space.
Yep. Yep.
So at the time you came on, there was intense training programs. Flow was getting really popular. And like, I remember back then, like we threw you guys right into the deep end of the pool
Yep.
and said, here, spell CRM and then go take a flow course. But like, these
Exactly.
were hard things to do, right?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, a little bit of drinking through the fire hose, as they say.
yeah. So we talk about things that you've learned this year, mostly outside of work, but inside of work. I mean, I think one of the things that the two letters you just can't get off your tongue, or you can't get through a day without saying, are AI. Right? It's everywhere. It's certainly in our
Hmm.
emails. It's in every website you go to. You're getting an ad for it. Tell me about AI. What is it doing for your job, for your position, for you personally? How is it impacting you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think like a lot of people, we kind of saw, especially as a company, we saw like where it's going and how groundbreaking it is and how integrated it's going to be with like our whole process on a regular basis. For me, AI transforms what I do. It doesn't necessarily replace the human element because you still have to kind of prompt it. You have to be able to give it context of what you're trying to do. But it allows me to be more efficient, in everything that I do. I did pretty well in English class when I went through school and in college, and I did that, but I'm not better than, artificial intelligence. They're able to fix my grammar and write things in a way that can come off professional, especially with people. And the way that I relate it to it, it sounds a little dramatic, but something simple is like formatting an email and writing things in a, grammatically correct way. to someone you've never met can leave a positive impression. If the first email you send to a client or to a person is littered with spelling errors or with formatted incorrectly, their perception of you is going to be less professional, generally speaking. So just as a bare minimum, that's something that I've done that can highlight the way that you communicate with individuals, especially when it's not necessarily word of mouth with that. But yeah, in general, yep.
That's a really good call out. We've been doing some episodes with Tim and Chad talking about news around AI and Dreamforce and some of those things. But what you just said really grounds it personally. Like, just forget Salesforce for a second. Like, what
Right.
is it? I think Chad used the word helper. Say we're a company of 50 employees, and it's like 25 helpers showed up.
Right.
And put them to work, man.
Right. Exactly.
But written communication in particular, it has the ability to make or break you in a lot of ways. I told my oldest son, well, both my sons, they get into relationships, whether it's friendships or dating or whatever. You try to have all this communication over texting, and not only is that written communication, but it's like hieroglyphics with all the stupid acronyms that they use.
It's its own language.
But man, you just, the inability to pick up tone and intention and see facial expressions and all those things just radically impact stuff. So as you think about the things you're doing, a lot of times you're using AI for your benefit, right? This is not communication.
Yep.
It's summarizing. It's turning 7 paragraphs into a bulleted list of action items. Go find all the follow-up actions that I called out and give me a short list of to-dos. And there's a lot of ways that's just, it's a helper that's helping you get through your day and make some of these things a little more bite-sized. But in terms of sending communication outside the company, whether that's email or whatever it might be, I think the ability there is just incredible. And I'm not like you. In high school and college, writing was not my thing. My degree's in engineering.
Yeah.
So I did
a lot of math
programming and stuff like that. But it's been a huge thing for me to find tools that help me do with written comms. That's a really important thing. You never get a second chance to make a first impression, they say.
Yeah, I always say, you can control, in terms of like a delivery of a message, you can control what you write, but how it's received is not on you. It's on that person that's receiving it. So if you can make it as, as clean, comprehensive as possible, even AI can give you context of like, hey, what is the tone of, what are you trying to deliver? It can help make that experience a lot more positive, for the recipient of that message.
Yeah, totally agree. As you think about, you've been out now 2.5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
If let's say somebody was on their way in when you were coming out, right? So these are people and they reach out and say, hey, you trained me, right? I really respected you. I appreciate how you went about it. I'm just interested in what you're doing now. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And whether that's directly into the Salesforce ecosystem or just the concept of getting out. And they go, man, can you just give me some advice? Because one thing I think about is, I think I talked to Carlos about this. Like, you get out of high school, like so many people in the military go straight from high school into the military.
Yep.
So you think you know everything because you're 18, but you know nothing.
Right.
And then you go in the military, which you learn a lot, but I'm not going to say it's not reality, but it's not applicable to civilian life for the most part.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you think about that and you go, all right, now I'm 26, 28, 32, whatever. I still don't know what's out there in the real world, but now you're older and it's kind of expected you do know some things, right? So we hear a ton about people saying, all right, I'm ready to start getting out. I want to articulate the things that I've done in the military into some terminology that I can put on a resume. I can put on a job application. I can use in an interview to say, hey, here's something I spent 9 months doing on a military project. How in the world does that translate to doing a release at Microsoft or product development at wherever, right? How would you go about having that conversation with somebody? Just helping them take the vast expanse of unlimited opportunities in the civilian world, narrow it down to a type of a job, a type of skill, and maybe even a path of, here's some steps you can kind of go through to go from endless to better options to real focus to something you actually want to go excel in and make a new career. How do you walk somebody through that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I would tell them is every location that you're going to be at, for the most part, is going to have an education office with a counselor. That's kind of the deal. They all have that, right? So have a conversation with one of those individuals and say, hey, I'm debating on leaving the service, or hey, my retirement's coming up in a year, 2 years. I would venture to say the sooner the better, right? So you can never start preparing for the afterlife of the military too soon, because there's a number of people that only do a couple years. There's people that do 30 years. So that's going to vary from person to person. But one of the first things that I would do is talk to the education office, and see about what programs are available. The transition assistance program is congressionally mandated, right? It's something that outside of exterior circumstances, everyone has to attend it to kind of get a checkbox to say, yes, you can leave the service. With that, a lot of the individuals that go through that program are not really paying attention. And especially during the time frame when I went, it was on Zoom. So you're able to just kind of like turn your camera off, go walk away and not pay attention. But if you have the opportunity to do it, pay attention because they're talking about a bunch of different paths, whether that's education, whether that's actual career, career related programs. But that's the main thing that I would start with for somebody that's leaving. The other part too, and this is something I didn't do, and no one that I've really talked to did this as well, is start translating. We all have performance reports in the military and even in the civilian world. But the way that we write in the military is significantly different than what it says on a resume. Some of it you can't say as well, right? Like there's some privacy related information, but start translating that information into plain words, like what you did, how you did it, what's the impact. That's how in the Air Force, that's generally how we wrote our performance report in that format, but it was not grammatically correct. We used acronyms for everything,
Yeah.
There's acronyms that I've heard in Salesforce that are the same in the military. And it took me like a year or two to get that out of my head that this is not the same one. So,
Right.
but you should be writing your resume. I mean, honestly, like with your performance reports. If you get a performance report, I recommend you try to write, some kind of resume related. And that's where AI can come in nowadays. Even like the free versions of, the chat GPTs, the Geminis and stuff. You can take out the proprietary or, the privacy type stuff in your bullets that you have and be like, hey, translate this to a civilian related resume and have it, capture your information.
Fantastic. That's a great point. And I thought about it on the military spouse side because there's nothing that says a mil spouse has got to wait until the service member is getting out to enter back into civilian life. So I've thought about talking to them saying, why are you going to wait on them to put in their papers? Do it now.
Yep.
That way, if they get picked up from Paducah, Kentucky and dropped into wherever,
right.
You have, as long as you can get internet wherever it is you're going, like you have an opportunity to do something there. But yeah, I mean, I think we was talking to Jenny about when you pick an MOS, like I think a lot of times when people pick either AFSC or MOS, it's probably just something that sounded good at the time. Like you don't even know what these jobs are. You have no idea if it's.
I didn't even pick mine. So yeah.
So that being said, and especially in the world of tech, you have OneNote, have Notepad, anything.
Yep.
Like every time you get one of those, open it up and speak English. Right? Turn that military jargon into this is what I felt. This is what they told me to do. This is what I did. This is how they said I did it. Right? Kind of a thing. And obviously, if you get commendations and those types of things, keep up with that stuff. But start keeping a journal or a diary, timeline based stuff of here's things that I did. Because that's at the end of the day, I've got a 33-year Air Force veteran that I'm working with right now who's on the verge of coming out. And like the internet didn't exist when he went in. Right. I'm like, the world changed a little bit since he enlisted. But this basically I said, open up Word, click dictate, talk into a microphone and just verbally throw up on the page. This is what I did. It don't have to be chronological. It don't have to be exhaustive. Just say what it is that you did. And then have AI go and summarize it. Take the emotion and the pressure of good written communication and go, I just need a list of things that I want to do. And it cuts through that so well. It makes me feel dumber is what it does. Because like, why couldn't I come up with that? But
why couldn't I have said that,
Yeah. But that's fantastic advice, man. Like actually keep track of what you're doing. Like I'm sure, especially if you're deployed, right? You're as heads down can be, like just
absolutely
lit to the wire, probably not sleeping a whole lot, trying to have a good time mixed with the chaos. The last thing you're thinking about is life after. Like, I just got to get to the after before I worry about the after. But what I'm hearing you say is just be very, very intentional. You're in there. Eventually, you're not going to be in there.
Exactly.
And if you want to achieve maximum success on the way out, much less know when you want to get out. Like, I think a lot of people, if they knew what they wanted and they knew what that delivered and what it took to get there, they may not re-enlist 3, 4, 5 times. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but I think a lot of people re-up because they just don't know what else. I don't have any other options. Well, why not? Well, I don't know. I don't even know how to say what
I don't know anything else. Yeah,
exactly. So, man, that's great advice. Anything else to throw out? Like I wanted to come up with a list of questions to kind of walk you through things we had discussed, but at the end of the day, if somebody pulls you aside on the street, any other advice, whether it's about a job or just making better use of your time in the military, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, making better use of the time in your military is just realizes that it's very short, and that ties into leaving the service too. So enjoy it, like you might there's people that only do, a year, 2 years, 4 years. It doesn't matter how long it is, but the expected life expectancy is a lot longer than what your expected career in the military is. So you need to be able to take the hat off a little bit. When I was an instructor, again, it's one of those things like you're playing a persona, right? Like you're being somebody because you have to, right? You're creating high stress situations to see how they perform. So what I would tell people while in the service, obviously is have the ability to go home and be done with whatever you've been doing, whether that's, super stressful or not, be done with it. Try to enjoy the little times that you have, but also have fun with what you're doing in the service. You're getting unique opportunities that you've never had, that you would never get otherwise, right? Like the amount of traveling that I've done overseas to not great places to some great places is still an experience that I can talk about, when I get much older. I mean, I do it now. I talk about it on a regular basis. So definitely enjoy it while you have it. And then once even if you're not sure or you're on the fence, really start thinking about next steps. But that's where AI doesn't have to scare you in that sense. Start using it. Start talking about what you like, what you don't like. Ask AI, what's a path that I could potentially investigate? It's not going to tell you that hey, this job was meant for you, but like it can guide you down a path and maybe you can start researching some other information.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Nick, man, I appreciate it. This is cool to get to learn a little more about you after working together for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Not on the same team necessarily, but just really glad to get to know you. Thank you for your service, man. In all
I appreciate
seriousness,
it.
it's the passion I have for doing this comes from a place of being around family and friends that served, and some didn't make it home, some did physically, but not mentally.
Right.
I got a lot of best friend died in the line of service as a police officer. Man, the fact that we can see these people walk by us on the street and not acknowledge just how freaking awesome y'all are is one of the saddest things as a nation that I cannot stand. So if I get a chance, I want to thank everybody that I lay eyes on for what you did and what your family sacrificed. Really appreciate it. And good to get to know you today. Thanks for taking the time to come talk to us today, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you.
And that concludes today's episode of Cirrius Talk, the Military Minute. On behalf of Cirrius Solutions, we would like to extend our sincere appreciation to the entire veteran and military spouse community for your unwavering commitment and sacrifice. Remember, your military experience has equipped you with exceptional skills that the Salesforce ecosystem needs. Join us next time as we continue to explore pathways to success in the Salesforce space. If you know a veteran on the verge of separating from the military or a military spouse considering Salesforce as a career, please share this episode with them. If you enjoyed the material, please give us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe on YouTube so that you can be alerted to new content. We greatly appreciate all of your support. Please see the show notes for links to learn more about Cirrius Solutions and other programs discussed in this episode. I want to extend a special thanks to Jason Fowler for allowing use of his song, Mystery Room. Until next time, this is Greg Banks, signing off.